Karen Dawn onto the Mark Thompson Show. Hi, Karen.
Hello, Kim. I'm going to live to 120 in that case.
There you go. Well, it's true though that when you have a passion and you find a purpose in your life that you want, you are invested in pushing forward, that you have something to live for, right?
Yeah, you got a reason to be here.
Absolutely. And I think so many of us just go through life and we never find that thing. But you did. You have this thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was a happy singer, songwriter, musician person when I learned what was happening to animals. And I tell you, life was a bit more fun before, but it's more meaningful now, I guess. So
Yeah.
I can't believe the boys have left you without a producer today, Kim.
I know. Mark's going to look back at the show and go, yeah, we can't do that again. No.
Not fair to you. You've done amazingly, though. I've just, the sound goes out and you just keep soldiering on and you get it back on. And it's like, good for you.
Trying the best we can.
I'm impressed. I think a lot of people who don't, do much behind the scenes on podcasts might not really know how darn hard that is to do this without a producer.
Well, to be talking and then trying to reboot your computer at the same time is always really interesting. I have 2 computers, by the way. That's how I was able to do that.
It's funny. I've been loving the show, and so interesting what you're talking about, them not being able to get people back into offices. A good chunk of that is that during the pandemic, everybody adopted animals, and then the shelters emptied out, and fell in love with them. So time comes to go back to the office, and they don't want to leave them. And so when there was a lot of news coverage about this, actually, that when there was a real shortage of workers, a lot of people had the power to say, well, I'll come back in as long as you make the office dog friendly or whatever, because people don't. That's one of the reasons people don't want to go back in. I think most of us know it's a lot easier to work when you've got a cat on your lap. So that stops people from wanting to come in.
Well, let's talk about this situation with this. We've heard stories like this again earlier with kids that raise these animals for 4-H, and then they have to be sold off at fairs. And once you're in this group doing this, there's no way out of auctioning off the animals at the end, presumably for slaughter. And a couple of kids have gotten involved and said, wait, backtrack. I'm attached to this animal. I don't want to do that. I want to keep this animal. I don't want it to be auctioned off. And they find huge resistance from the authorities that are involved in auctioning off the animals. And we have a case like that with this goat.
Right. And 4-H didn't start 100 years ago. I mean, it started a long time ago. And it was generally assumed that all of us needed to be eating meat, and that, when kids didn't want to eat meat, they needed to be put back on the right track, and what 4-H did. And I'm a fan of people being aware and conscious of what they're doing. So it actually introduced the kids to those animals who were going to become meat, and they raised them. And then they didn't all want to have them killed. And it's this beautiful movie called At the Fork. And it's such a great movie because it really looks at welfare laws, and it looks at the possibility of veganism. It doesn't tell people what they should do, how they should feel, but it really explores, is the best thing to do to eat meat with good welfare? Is the best thing to do to go vegan? And there is a segment on that on 4-H, and it shows these kids crying over these animals who they have to give up. And I think in the original days, they were always pretty strict about this. Parents told their kids, but 100 years ago, parents used to beat their kids as well. We've kind of changed our idea about parenting. And we've changed our ideas about meat eating. Not that everybody's saying, and I never come on and say, you all have to be vegan. But, I think most people these days, if you think your 10-year-old kid has to eat meat, well, you really need to get better informed. I mean, that's why a lot of the younger generation are veg, because when they, as children, feel like they want to go veg, we no longer have parents saying, you have to do that. There's just a softer way. So unfortunately, as usual, the laws and the powers that be have not caught up with the way most people feel. So we had a situation in Shasta County where this young girl, and she was 9 years old at the time, and there she's a little older with a photo of Seder the goat, because there's a lawsuit about this now. She raised Seder to go to the fair, which, of course, as you said, means going eventually to auction and to slaughter. And just as the fair is rolling around, she's realizing she doesn't want to do this. And Mum gets in touch with the fair and says, look, she's in love with this goat. She's been taking him around, treating him like a doggy. She's just doesn't have the heart for this. We want to back out. What do we do? And they said, you can't back out. You've signed a contract. You have to go forward. So they go to the fair, and Seder gets sold to, and it's actually Senator Dahl's office, and for $900 and something. And Seder is supposed to be barbecued at an event, a church event on a Sunday. And so the night before they're supposed to give Seder up, Mum comes in and she finds her 9-year-old daughter just sobbing on Seder's fur. And she's like, I can't do this. She reaches out again and she says, we'll pay you back. We'll do whatever you need to do. And she gets permission from Senator Dahl's office, who's like, absolutely, if the girl cannot, bear to part with the goat, we're not going to insist. And, sure, they'll take the money or whatever they're owed, so there won't be in breach of contract. But the fair people say, absolutely not. So Mum just decides, look, I can't do this. And we learn from the lawsuit that the girl has lost 3 grandparents over the last year. And Mum is just like, I can't do this. She'll be traumatized for life. So Mum takes the goat, and they bring the goat to a farm that's 50 miles away and decides she'll deal with the consequences. And she's not saying, screw you to the fair. She's saying, look, I went and got permission from the people who bought him. They said it's fine. They'll use another goat or whatever. And there she is. This is her at the age of 9 with Seder the goat, who she's just completely in love with. And but so Mum moves the goat. The folks from the fair tell Mum that they're going to have her charged with grand theft, which is a felony, which you can go to jail for not turning her daughter's beloved pet goat in. Then they get the police involved, and the Shasta and Nicholas Kristof, who I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners read, the New York Times columnist. He's just one of the most beloved writers in the country. He covered this, and he just wrote, he just cannot believe that with all the things that the police and could be in law enforcement could be dealing with, and with the fentanyl problems in Shasta County, whatever. I'll get you to read that quote out from him because it's so helpful. Kim, if
He
you don't
says,
mind.
I'm astonished that the best use of Shasta County taxpayers' money was to dispatch 2 deputies on a full day's journey, not to fight crime or addiction. Fentanyl overdose deaths quintupled in Shasta County in 2021, the last year for which there is data, but to ensure the slaughter of a girl's pet goat. That, again, from New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof. Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what they did.
And it's totally true, too. I mean, come on.
Oh, my gosh. This is what we want our taxpayer dollars spent for? Yeah. So, and well, we'll get to this later. But so they forcibly take the goat. And we don't know exactly what happened to the goat and whether Seder was actually served at this barbecue. We're going to guess not, since the senator knew how badly the girl didn't want him given up. But the goat was killed. And Mom has sued the fair and the police department for, the trauma that was done to this girl is incredible. And I don't think anybody wants their taxpayer dollars spent on this. And they've sued because, they would have been in breach of contract, but you actually are allowed to breach a contract. They hadn't handed over the goat yet. So it would not have been grand theft. They were, bullying. They were bullying her and terrifying her. It would have been breach of contract. And if you breach a contract, you have to do something to make up the contract. And the people on the other end of the contract already said, we don't care. So, we're not going to do this. So Mum has sued with the help of a wonderful animal organization, and I'm trying to remember the name of Vanessa's legal firm, but we can dig it up and put it in the chat, for violating the young girl's rights to change her mind, and for the ridiculous behavior of law enforcement to go and, insist and really bully their way in and demand that this goat be taken and slaughtered. So this all came out a few months ago in the news. And that's when Nicholas Kristof wrote his column. And I'm thrilled to say the Sacramento Bee had it on their front page, which is important because the Sacramento Bee is what our state's legislators read. And they've got to know that this is not acceptable, and that, sure, and like in letters to the editor, there are a few people who said, well, the girl's got to be toughened up. But the vast majority of people don't think what the world needs now is less love. So, if a little girl changes her mind, just why would you intentionally traumatize her? This is back in the news. This was over the weekend, because now the Attorney General, in his wisdom, has decided to countersue the mum for causing all this trouble, which if they had just let her change her mind and they could use a different goat at the barbecue, none of this would have happened. And of course, Mum's not suing because she wants to make millions of dollars, and that's not why this animal activist law firm is suing. Right. It's just, you sue so that people don't just get away with this and do it again. And if 4-H is meant to keep on keeping on, and people that can have different feelings about whether they think 4-H is a great idea or a terrible idea, we've got to change it, that if you've got a kid who's hopelessly fallen in love with their animal, that they don't have to give the animal up to be barbecued.
I guess one could make the argument that 4-H then, their whole point is to raise leaders in agriculture, right? And so if you're teaching someone about agriculture, then you have to teach them, I'm playing devil's advocate, then you have to teach them that when you raise an animal, you're raising it, you're in business, right? Yes. And so you have a contract to someone, you honor the contract. It's all about, I get that it's all about business, but it just seems that you're dealing with children. And so you have to be a little more sensitive about what's happening.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. There's an argument to be made that even when a contract isn't easy to honor, you honor it. But this is a 9-year-old girl. And as you said, we're raising people, 4-H, the idea is that we're training people who are going to be leaders in agriculture. I think it's safe to say this girl wasn't meant to be one of those.
Right.
Not everybody's cut out for it.
Yeah.
And if you're so not cut out for it that you were sobbing over this animal, okay, well, then do something to make up that contract. And again, of course, that's my opinion. I'm an animal rights activist, and I don't want to see any goats slaughtered for human food. But the point is that I think, the vast majority of people who just have decent hearts don't want our resources used this way to go and, bust into this place and grab this goat so that it can be slaughtered, despite how badly the 9-year-old girl and her mother are trying to save it, and despite them having really done all the right things to save this goat, including getting permission from the people who bought the goat to pack out. So, and that's, it's a story, the kind of story I love to bring to you. Because, as I mentioned, sure, I'm an animal rights activist, I'm vegan. So, and I know that my way of looking at the world is not yet the majority. And I don't tell other people they need to see the world the way I do. But at least let's get to the point where our laws and the way the government is doing things reflects how most people feel. And I don't think most people want this poor 9-year-old girl bullied into giving up this
No.
goat and having to deal with the
No, as a matter
consequences.
of fact, it makes me upset that, as you were saying, that's where we put our resources when there's so much happening and there's so much crime and there's so much, we have stores closing because people are going in and stealing products by the armload, and we're concerned about some girl's goat. Like,
Yep,
really,
guess
that's
where the
our
police
focus?
were?
Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
it just
Exactly.
doesn't make sense to me. But Karen
I
Dawn, thank
wanted
you for
to
always. Oh, go ahead.
may yeah, I just wanted to, before we go, I just wanted to do a tiny little update, which is last week we talked again about a situation where the government just is not in line with the way the humans feel, the people
Right.
feel, and that is this Catalina deer situation where they've decided they're going to go in and kill off all the deer on the island, despite the fact that 90% of the human residents there don't want them killed, and they love them, and they'd much rather see them dealt with by doing something about the reproductive cycles, putting something in deer feed, something like that. So I just wanted to mention that in the newspaper on Saturday in the Los Angeles Times, there was a wonderful letter there from a gal who was on the Catalina Conservancy 10 years ago. These are the folks who are now trying to kill all the deer, who's saying that the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors does have jurisdiction over the situation. And whereas the Conservancy was trying to just get away with this without anybody noticing, thank heavens the Los Angeles Times has decided to cover it, and we're trying to get a hearing now before the Board of Supervisors. And there is a petition that I'm going to add to the comment thread after you and I sign off, in case anybody is interested and wants to learn more about the situation with the Catalina deer, that they're talking about just wiping off the island, despite the fact that most people don't want them totally wiped off the island. So
I have the petition address in the chat and also at the bottom of the screen. You just have to put a dash in between everything. So it's change.org /p/stop the slaughter of mule deer on Catalina Island with a dash in between all the words. You can see it on the screen and it's also in the chat.
I just want to mention, when we're chatting, I don't look at all the comments coming in, though I'm certainly interested in them, because if anybody has questions, I'd love to get to them. But, last week I remember somebody wrote, well, does she honestly think it's just like controlling deer on your lawn or something like that? And I wasn't saying that, and I wasn't saying I had the answers, but I think it was Karen Cooper who just summed it up, saying, where there's a will, there's a way. And when you have a situation where the vast majority of people on the island love these deer and don't want them killed, and certainly the deer don't want to be killed, you find another way to control their population. And we do have contraceptives, and there are other ways to do things. So that's, unfortunately, it was presented in the press of, plants versus deer, and you don't care about plants if you care about deer. No, we just know, as Karen said, where there's a will, there's a way, and there's a way to control the population,
right,
without wiping out all the beloved deer.
Well, it looks like they're trying to get 15,000 signatures on this, and so far they're at 13,333. So,
right.
If you're interested in signing that petition, they could definitely use the help.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.